Welcome to Vainglory Analytics video 15, Picks, Bans, and Wins in 3.1. I know version 3.2 is out, but I haven't had time to update my match archive for 3.2 yet, so this is about all the heroes except Malene. Besides, in the first few weeks after an update, everything is turbulent anyway, so I'm not sure there's stable data about 3.2 ready yet. Today we're looking at just 3 questions. Who's getting picked, who's getting banned, and who's winning matches? As I've done with the past few videos, I'm answering all these questions with data from my match archive, and if you've been watching, you know that means 5,000 ranked matches from 3v3 and another 5,000 ranked matches from 5v5 that I sampled from the week of April 5th to 11th, 2018 across all tiers of play, randomly sampled so as to be representative of all ranked matches in general. Somebody pointed out in the comments to the last video that I didn't say what region I'm getting these from. These are from the North America region only because that's my region. I could sample from more regions, but frankly that's a lot of work, so I'm just doing one. Also in this video I'm just going to focus on 5v5, and it's going to be a quicker video than most of the recent ones, so let's get started. I actually want to answer all 3 of those questions twice. Once in the mid tiers, that is tiers 5 through 7, and then once for the high tiers, that is 8 and up. The reason is that the answers change as you move through the tiers, so one aggregate answer isn't going to apply to everybody. I compute the tier of a match by averaging the tiers of all the players in it, and more or less rounding down. For example, here's one of the matches in my archive. We have everybody from tier 4 bronze through tier 8 silver in this match. Holy cow. And the average ends up being 5 silver. Another surprise is that in my 5v5 ranked match archive, this led to no tier 10 matches. Sure, there were matches that had tier 10 players in them, but there were always enough tier 9 players mixed in so that the average for the match was at best a high 9. For example, the highest tier match that appeared in my sample was this one. As you can see, there were 5 tier 9 players and 5 tier 10 players, but based on the bronzes and silvers and golds, it averaged out to pull the match itself down to an average of POA gold. So when I say high tiers, I actually mean just tiers 8 and 9 as far as matches go, but there are tier 10 players in there. Okay, let's start by looking at the mid tiers. This is where I sit, so I care about this analysis. I want to start by looking at win rates because I found it helpful to organize this whole analysis around that concept. The first thing to notice is that there's not a huge difference in these numbers. Every hero has a win rate that's in the 40s and 50s. Sure, 41% is low, but the lesson to learn here is that you should never get tilted because someone does an off-meta pick. It does not tank your team's chances to win. It may have decreased them, but not by a crazy amount. The next thing to notice is Fortress. He's way out ahead of the pack. I'm sorry, I just did that. Pretend I didn't do that. But other than Fortress, no hero gives much of a win advantage at all. Bumping from an assumed 50-50 win chance to 54% just because you pick Idris or Celeste, that's not that huge a change. So, this data isn't actually that valuable on its own. We need to couple it with some pick and ban rate data. Let's bring in the pick rate data first. Now we can start to notice some interesting stuff. First of all, Fortress is not getting picked very often for how effective he seems to be. This suggests that people need to open their mind to some more Fortress. Same goes for Samuel and Grace. It seems that people know how effective Gwen, Catherine, and Arden are, but maybe not Koshka. As we get further down the list, we start to see some potentially overpicked heroes. Vox and Ringo are extremely frequent picks, despite not actually giving the team any particular win advantage in general. Worse, at the bottom we're starting to see some heroes that are picked pretty often, and yet actually seem to cause problems for their team. Saw, Kestrel, Blackfeather, and a few others. People who draft those heroes often may want to look up your personal win rates of those heroes to see if they're really as good as you think they are. Now, a second ago I said maybe Koshka was not as popular as she should be, but is that because no one picks her or because she's often banned? It's time to bring in the bans data. Yep, Koshka gets banned a lot. In fact, among all the heroes with an over 50% win rate, she's by far the most banned one. Here's clearly a new lesson we need to learn. It's time to start banning Fortress, Idris, Celeste, Scarf, Samuel, and so on. Almost nobody is doing that, and their win rates are the best across all the mid-tiers. So, who are people banning? Well, they're mostly banning things they shouldn't be. Krull, Alpha, Tony, and Taka have huge ban rates, and every single one of them has a below 50% win rate.
I call to you now, friends, comrades in the mid-tiers with me. Stop this senseless Taka banning. He's not actually good.
That's perhaps the most valuable lesson to take away from this. How to better target our bans in the mid-tiers. And hey, if you're in the mid-tiers with me and you end up on a team with me and you're in charge of the bans, say hello in chat and tell me you saw this video. Alright, so how do things look in the high tiers? Same as the mids or different? Well, the first thing we notice is that the top heroes are different. Also, the top win rate is higher. So clearly the high skill players know how to squeeze something out of these top win rate heroes that people in the mid tiers haven't yet figured out. You'll sometimes hear people talk about high skill cap heroes, and this seems to be what they mean. Also at the bottom here, you notice lower win rates for the worst heroes than we did in the mid tiers. Perhaps high tier players know better how to exploit or take advantage of certain heroes like Lance and Jewel. The fact that Jewel has only a 32% win rate is pretty extreme. Now, with the mid tiers we saw that not everybody knew how to pick or ban the high win rate heroes. What do you think? Are the high tier players wise enough to do that? Let's see, we'll start with the picks. Nope. Or wait. Do they not know to pick Cruel, or do they ban him? Maybe we better bring in the bans data too. Oh, it seems like some of each. First of all, this Cruel ban rate is absolutely obscene, and you can see it's deserved. He gets picked in almost all the matches in which he isn't banned, and he wins a whopping 62% of them. But then Baron? Why is nobody Baroning? 0% ban rate, 0%, and only 11% pick rate, but a 60% win rate. Hey up there, all you in the top tiers, play Baron, it seems to work. Churnwalker is almost the same story, except not quite as extreme. But we do see that the high tier players know to ban Fortress more than the mid tier players did. They only did it 5% of the time. But then, here's a big chunk of heroes with good win rates that almost never get banned. And up here in the high tiers, Taka's ban rate is even higher. Look, he played in roughly every game in which he wasn't banned. But his win rate isn't as amazing as all these heroes above that they're not banning. So the Taka ban is way overused. Start spending it on some of these heroes, or on Celeste, whose win rate is roughly the same as Taka, and who's almost never banned. Now, do the high tier players make any mistakes on picks and bans with the weak heroes? A few, but not as bad as the mid tier players did. We see very high numbers of Arden and Vox picks despite their sub 50% win rates, and still very high Tony and Alpha ban rates despite their low win rates as well. So there's even more bans the high tier players should allocate elsewhere. So what have we learned from all this? Well, let's separate the lessons into mid tier and high tier things to remember. Lessons for mid tier players? First, we saw several heroes that have high win rates but are not picked or banned as often as they deserve. So pick or ban these folks. Second, we saw several heroes that are overpicked but that don't have great win rates. I say neutral, meaning they had a 50-50 win rate, so their overpicking isn't hurting anything, but maybe it's not necessary. And I say bad, meaning they had a sub 50% win rate, so their overpicking may actually be hurting the teams that are picking them. Finally, we saw a lot of wasted bans in the mid-tiers. A lot. So these are the takeaways for mid-tier players like me. How about the high tiers? Well, as in the mid-tiers, we saw several heroes that have high win rates but are not picked or banned as often as they deserve. And again, just like in the mid-tiers, there were heroes that were overpicked, but that don't have great win rates, either 50-50 or sub 50%. Finally, unlike in the mid-tiers, we saw only a few wasted bans, but we did see some. So, I hope these takeaways have given you some ideas of how to not just follow the other sheep in the ban and pick phase, but to start following the numbers instead. See you next time.